Hi, I'm Brent Farley with Farley Law. Today I want to talk to you about smart contracts. It's a little bit far away from traditional banking, but I think it's important to be aware of because there's a lot of developments in the area of cryptocurrency and blockchain, and smart contracts tie into those concepts. So smart contracts, it seems like today we title everything with smart in front of it to mean something, and it never means the same thing. So we have smartphones, we have smart fridges, we have smart stove, we have all kinds of smart things, and it usually just means there's some kind of additional technology plugged into it to give it additional functionality. So smart contracts are a little bit different. A smart contract takes contract terms or an idea about what a contract should be and programs the contract into self-executing computer code. And so, for example, you might have a computer program that follows along with interest rates or a digital currency rates, or the fact that a transaction has occurred in a digital currency, and it takes that event and it triggers additional transactions in events, often in cryptocurrency or on some kind of blockchain ledger. So why would you do that? Well, it takes kind of the human element out of the contract and makes the contract or a transaction self-executing. So you're not waiting for a human on the other end of a transaction to push a button to wire funds to an account, or to ACH funds to an account, or to take their time in reviewing contracts and documents and signatures and things before they actually follow through. It also takes the human element out of, there's the practice amongst comptrollers and companies to kind of delay payments on contracts to uh, extend the payables timeline as a sort of financing for a company. So you can avoid a lot of those sorts of issues with a smart contract, provided that transactions can be executed digitally and based on instructions from computer code. And so where you see a lot of this is in cryptocurrency and blockchain, where the transactions are digital and they can be tied to executable computer code. So, uh, are smart contracts enforceable? Well, yes, they can be. You would still be following along with the traditional contract principles. The facts that if something is going to be a contract, there needs to be an offer from one party to another. There needs to be acceptance by the other party. And that means that both parties need to come to a meeting of the minds and understanding as to what the contract and the agreement is. And so, in that respect, you can't necessarily, in all cases, just write a bunch of computer code, have somebody click an I agree button, and expect that to be an enforceable agreement. It might be self-executing, but if the parties there was no meeting of the minds between them, you might be coming in after the fact to say, hey, this is not what we intended. And you might have a lawsuit, you might have a dispute, you might have people fighting over whether a contract needs to be rolled back. Some of the difficulties in that context are you may not you may not have access to their party because the parties may be international. You may have no idea who they are in some cases because of the semi-anonymity that's available in blockchain. And there are other similar reasons why it might be just very difficult to enforce a contract. The other piece of the contract is you do need to have considerations that there needs to be an exchange of rights or goods or money or some kind of transaction or exchange of promises. And so you would need to take the smart contract and make sure that the contract has those elements baked into it. Usually that can be pretty simple. It can be as simple as somebody handing a $5 bill to the ice cream shop owner for a ice cream cone. And there are probably a lot of cases with smart contracts where you might do something as simple. So what are the use cases with this? Hedging in digital currencies, I think is important. There are transactions called flash loan transactions where the borrowing process and the repayment process happens very, very quickly, faster than could be executed by somebody inputting information into a computer. Um, I think there's a lot of use, particularly in hedging, where you need to pull counterparty risk out of the transaction as much as you can. So, whereas you might have an interest rate hedge associated with a loan, uh, at intervals or determinations made usually by a human, um, what the actual transfer of cash back and forth between the two counterparties needs to be. Whereas with a smart contract, you really ought to be able to program that into computer code. Doesn't make it infallible because the inputs that the computer is relying on can be manipulated. But it does speed up the transaction. It should take some discretion out of those types of transactions. What are some limitations? Well, I think there's some inherent limitations in terms of the kinds of complexity you can bake into it. So by nature, a smart contract requires computer programming. And so if you have a programmer who's working on building computer code, that programmer has to sit down and actually anticipate all the things that might happen in the course of the agreement between two parties. And so that should be relatively easy to do if the transaction is simple and well defined. But often transactions are not simple and well defined. And a lot of an attorney's job is to sit down and think about, okay, what are all the things that might happen, and what are the key things that we need to address in this agreement. And very often in complicated transactions, we leave a fair amount of what the performance needs to look like to the discretion of the parties, just simply because you can't always anticipate everything that's going to happen. And also the performance of the contract might require some human touch and judgment throughout the course of performance. And so I think there are some inherent limitations in the way that a smart contract is created, in the way it can anticipate future behavior and future needed behavior between the parties. And so I think we'll still see a lot of smart contracts in the context of cryptocurrency transactions, in blockchain transactions, and transactions where the sequence of events needs to be predictable. I would point out that Siemens, which is a very large company, did a bond issue this year, and I think last year as well. And they settled using blockchain programming and smart contracts. And it took the bond settlement process and compressed it into a very short time frame, in minutes instead of days or weeks. It was very impressive and has a very strong use in terms of reducing settlement risk, a risk of being actually funds actually being paid in to fund the bond. So really some exciting things that you could do with smart contracts, but certainly also some limitations. Last notes. I mean, what are we going to see in the future of smart contracts? And so, ever since blockchain became kind of a mainstream topic, I heard people discussing, okay, well, can you take a blockchain? Maybe could you take a land title and tie it to a blockchain? And in theory, if you did that, you could have a smart contract that would transfer land titles. Um, I think it's theoretically possible. I think there are some hurdles and problems that would need to be overcome, whether you're tying a physical land title property to a blockchain, or you're tying a personal property title to a blockchain, because you're always going to have a connection between the personal property and the blockchain title itself. There'll always be questions, or there'll always be the possibility of having questions about whether a blockchain title really and truly represents a title to a physical good. And particularly in land, where we take titles to land and we subdivide them into so many elements, we might divide a parcel into multiple properties. We might divide a rights to a parcel to be given to multiple people at various different times. Over time, it might belong to one person and then another and another. And then we take other pieces of property, might convey use rights like an easement to one party or another. So I think in terms of, I think there are some very large questions in terms of, okay, how do we take a land title and then put it in a blockchain and make sure that tie covers all the complexity that might lie in real estate transfers, and then also truly represents what the title to the property that's being conveyed is. If you think about it too much, you might get a little bit of a headache with all the possibilities there. Some similar problems exist with trying to tie other personal property to kind of a blockchain ledger, and because smart contracts rely on on titles and rights being digitized. I think there's some inherent difficulties there. But certainly when you're conveying digital currencies or you're conveying title to something that is a little easier to tie to a blockchain, you should be able to do quite a lot in terms of flexibility with smart contracts. Again, this topic's a little far afield for most of our banking clients. However, I do think it's very important to be aware of developments in this area. And I think that over time, you'll see more and more influence from blockchain showing up in the mainstream banking world. And so it's important to understand who your parties are, how they are operating in the background. And that way you should understand a little bit better what your risks are in dealing with that party. And you should also be able to identify some opportunities. I don't think that a lot of people, I think, are leery of cryptocurrency in the banking world, and for many reasons, rightly so. However, I think that over time we'll see areas develop where it is important for banks to be involved in transactions, and at least understanding the source of funds from the clients that they're banking, and the business of clients that they're banking, and so that they can adequately control risks that are generated from their business operations. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the topic. We do like to hear from our clients on questions and things that they're looking at in the industry. If you do have a request or something that you'd like to see us talk about, go ahead and send us a note, and we'll talk to you next time.